A seismic trade that can shift the landscape of two franchises made in the NBA. The Kings and Pacers swapping pieces. Tyrese Haliburton goes to the Pacers. Domantas Sabonis goes to the Kings. That's the headline. Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, Tristan Thompson, and Buddy Hield also included. But it's a massive trade for two teams going on different paths. The Pacers want to get a little younger, want to rebuild. The Kings want to make the NBA playoffs. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers. He's Matt George, the host of Locked On Kings. We're going to break this move down, and we've done podcasts together on trades between these two teams before, and neither of us ever expected something like this. Matt, from the Kings side, what was your kind of initial reaction when you saw the full parameters of this deal?
Well, first off, Tony, you know that from our ultimate mock draft this past offseason, I've been bugging you for some kind of Domantas Sabonis to Sacramento trade for a while. I've liked Domantas Sabonis for a long time, thought that he could be an exact piece that the Kings are looking for. He's a walking double-double with the points that he scores and the rebounds that he puts up, and the Kings have been terrible on the glass consistently over the last few years. So in terms of the acquisition of Domantas Sabonis, I'm thrilled from a Sacramento Kings perspective. I'm a little curious on the timing because I've been asking Monte McNair, Kings general manager, to make a swing for the fences type move really since last offseason. But I slowed down on that over the last month when the Kings basically became a team that's 15 games under 500 or something like that. And even though they're still in the play-in race because the West is so bad, I thought this team had no business being in a conversation for the playoffs. And I was already turning my attention towards this upcoming draft. And maybe the Kings can reevaluate what they have next season, try and build something different around Fox and Haliburton. Monte McNair had other ideas. So I get the swing for the fences move that I was asking for, but I was stunned to see that Tyrese Haliburton was the one having to be traded away. Major takeaways from it, essentially, Tony, and we'll dive into this more. Tyrese Haliburton had more trade value than De'Aaron Fox. That's been made abundantly clear. The Kings needed to trade away Tyrese in order to make this deal happen because it's clear that the Pacers and other teams weren't just going to take Fox. You have to trade talent to get talent. And in the end, even though the Kings are trading away a fan favorite and someone who has significant all-star potential, they're getting a two-time all-star. The Kings got the better player in the deal short term. They got better short term, but there's also a significant gamble element to this too, Tony, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle said after the Pacers-Hawks game the same thing you just said. It takes talent to get talent because the Pacers, the optics will be what they are in a few years, but the Pacers gave up the two-time All-Star. They've been lauded as winners a lot publicly, but they gave up a two-time All-Star. It's fascinating how these kind of things can be discussed in the immediate term. Something that stands out to me in this trade before I hop into the Pacers reaction side is how much the conferences the teams are in ended up mattering because the Pacers are only 1.5 games behind the Kings in the whole NBA standings. These teams aren't that far apart right now in the actual standings, but the Kings are only 2.5 games out of the play-in in their conference, and the Pacers are 8 games out of the play-in in the East. So that gap between these teams in the play-in in their conference led to the Kings thinking, let's go for it, and the Pacers thinking, let's go backwards, and led to this trade happening. And the thing that made this a good trade to the Pacers for me is because, well, the value is great for Sabonis. That's what makes it a good trade. But in tandem with also dealing LeVert over the weekend, they have really gone from the era that they were in, which was running in place, barely making the play-in last year, didn't really look like they had much of a future to. They draft Chris Duarte. They get a lot of good picks for LeVert. They get Tyrese Haliburton for Sabonis. All of a sudden, they have the young stuff to suddenly be a good team going forward in the future. And I didn't think they were going to trade Sabonis. I thought it was a little more likely after they traded LeVert, but I didn't think they were going to do it. But if I knew that Haliburton was an option, I would have thought that maybe they were going to trade Sabonis. I think that is the apex of young players that is even kind of attainable. Like if you sort every player 22 and younger in the NBA by offensive advanced stats, Haliburton's top 5 in almost all of them. He is a very talented young player. He has his weaknesses, but he is an extremely talented young player with a ton of room to grow. And for a Pacers team that is 19-37 now after losing to Atlanta a few minutes ago, this is exactly what they needed to do. So I think the Pacers did well in this, and I think the Kings accomplished their goals and did well too. But it's just fascinating to see how much just the conference these teams are in ended up influencing what the trade ultimately was.
I want to praise the hell out of the Indiana Pacers because I think they did a phenomenal job. Getting Tyrese Haliburton is a massive, massive deal. Tyrese is a absolute stud. And I said and made it perfectly clear on Locked On Kings that with how bad the Kings team has been, how disappointing that they have been, no player on this roster was untouchable. But if I was to pick anybody that I would bet my house or my life on not being moved, it was Tyrese Haliburton. And lo and behold, that's who the Indiana Pacers get. And for the Pacers, adjusting or transitioning to a rebuild, Tyrese is one of those players that will accelerate a rebuild. The Pacers can build around Tyrese or have Tyrese be a part of a core that can turn things around and be good in as early as a couple of seasons. I'm very confident in saying that. And I'm excited to see what he can do alongside the expertise and the geniusness rather of Rick Carlisle there on the bench. So I love this move for the Pacers in terms of getting Tyrese Haliburton. He is tough to say goodbye to, but at the same time, the Kings, I mean, they needed to make a change. They needed to do something. Now they fully committed to De'Aaron Fox, even though Fox has had a disappointing year and this is his first year of his max contract that he signed. But Fox has also never had an all-star type player to play with. He hasn't. So the Kings have not only double committed to Fox, saying, hey, even though Tyrese looked like he was kind of stealing your thunder and taking the keys from you a little bit, we're trading him away. We're committing to you and keeping you. And on top of that, we're bringing in a all-star big to pair with you. So Fox needs to repay that trust and repay that favor by figuring it out quickly with Domantas Sabonis. If you're trading away Tyrese Haliburton, you better be getting good and better immediately. And that's what the expectations are with this group. So the excuses for the Kings of, hey, you have to let these two kind of figure it out and develop together, that excuse is gone. Even though Fox and Sabonis haven't played a minute together on the same team, there are expectations for that unit to click right away. And that might be a hefty expectation for this team to live up to short term.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it with Fox. This is the best partner he's ever had, and they do have skills that fit well together. They can be the all lefty team. The Kings can now be the lefty dominance over there in Sacramento, and that's a great way of putting it. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it works. Just from box score numbers, like before we get into any sort of nitty gritty about these players, Sabonis would be second on the Kings in scoring, second on the Kings in assists, one of the best play finishers around the basket, the best rebounder on the team. Like, he's a massive upgrade over a lot of what they have now, and he's the best screener in the NBA. His defense isn't awesome, but when he will go from defending power forwards to defending centers in Sacramento. He will be okay enough on that end that they will be better. I think the Kings will definitely be better. And a non-factor we shouldn't overlook for the Kings is they got off of Buddy Hield's contract, which they have wanted to do basically since the moment pen was put to paper on that contract. So the Kings did accomplish a lot of the goals they wanted to accomplish. And when trades like that happen, what happens with fans is they go, well, wait, the process of what got us here is the problem, not the goals themselves. But, the Kings want to be really good. I might be speaking for you, but the Kings wanted to be really good, and they wanted a great running mate for Fox, and they got it. And they got off Field's money in the process. So Justin Holiday's kind of good, too. Like, he could be a low-key helpful piece for a team that has no wings. I mean, the Kings have very few good wings. He's a reliable shooter and good defender. So that's another not nothing for Sacramento. On the Pacers side, and I can talk about Haliburton forever and ever, obviously. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. That's the only redeeming quality of Buddy Hield's NBA skills. So, yeah, not even as much this year, right? He misses quite a few of them and takes several a game. If he's not shooting well, he's very valueless. But they do need anyone who's even kind of a threat from out there. Perhaps he could help. That's at least the thinking. But your sounds tell the whole story, right? He has been extremely frustrating in Sacramento for years and years. Tristan Thompson will maybe not ever even land a plane in Indianapolis before his buyout is complete. It's all about Haliburton for them. So, well, the pieces are what they are, but I'm going to call this trade the Haliburton-Sabonis trade forever, basically.
Yeah, it is a Haliburton for Sabonis swap, but two other elements of this trade that are important to point out. One is this is basically a financially neutral move. Like, no team is saving him out of space. So that is essential. It's essentially a talent swap is what it is. This is not the Pacers dumping money or the Kings dumping money. This is a even for even split, which is why I think the Pacers were able to demand a Haliburton, and why they think the Kings were a little more willing to move on from Haliburton is because attaching Buddy Hield to this deal, I've seen national reporters say, man, the Pacers got both Tyrese Haliburton and Buddy Hield. I imagine the Kings said, no, if you want Tyrese Haliburton, you also have to take Buddy Hield and agreed. His money. And the reality of the situation is Buddy Hield is going to disappoint Pacers fans pretty quickly because he has put up impressive numbers and he is capable of becoming an absolute microwave and torching you from 3-point range and hitting 8 3-pointers in the span of 15 minutes. He is capable of that, but we haven't seen that Buddy Hield for a couple of seasons. And we all thought in Sacramento that Buddy needed to go to a place where he was being added to a team that had clear stars, that had a clear role set for him as a floor spacer. Going to Indiana, where they're in the midst of a rebuild, I don't like that landing destination for Buddy Hield whatsoever. Buddy has shot the Kings out of games, especially this season. He's also horrendous on the defensive end of the floor. He's really known for one thing, and he hasn't done that one thing very well. So I'm not trying to rip on Buddy Hield too much, but at least the air for me in Sacramento is moving on from Buddy alone makes this Kings team better. It's addition by subtraction, getting Buddy Hield out of Sacramento, and to get Justin Holiday, like you mentioned, Jeremy Lamb, who's on an expiring deal. Who knows if the Kings have plans to bring him back. Like, that's an important note to pay attention to. Not only did the Kings get the best player, at least short term, in Domantas Sabonis in the draft or in this trade, they also got the better filler than what the Indiana Pacers got. That might not mean much in the long run because the Pacers still got I think future All-Star in Tyrese Haliburton, but at least short term, there's a lot of reasons to like this trade from the Kings, even if you're scared of the fact that Sabonis's contract is only for 2 more seasons compared to the amount of control the Pacers have over Tyrese Haliburton and his future. The Kings essentially have 2 seasons, Tony, to figure this out and make this work, or they risk losing Domantas Sabonis in free agency, and then they traded Tyrese Haliburton away for nothing. And Monte McNair's probably out of a job. So that's a concerning gamble, I know, for Kings fans. But in the end, we got what we wanted in Sacramento, which was a swing for the fences move and a reason to watch this team again.
A crucial 3 months coming up for the Kings. Sabonis extension eligible really this summer. If they can prove it to him that they're good and going for it now, maybe he'll want to put pen to paper. Who knows? The Pacers is a long game for them, and Haliburton is a huge, huge part of that with now 2 lotto picks in Duarte and Haliburton to talk about for years and years in Indiana. I've got all this covered on Locked On Pacers. Matt's got it all on Locked On Kings, and we'll be together on tomorrow's episodes of our own shows. So if you want more on this trade, we'll have lots more coming for you on the Locked On Network. Thanks, everybody, for this segment.